I walked into the restaurant and immediately felt that something was off. My parents' anniversary dinner was already over. The plates had been cleared away, wine glasses left damp on the table. That heavy stillness that settles in after the check has been paid. My mother glanced up and gave me that gentle smile she always uses when she's about to make a request. "Oh, you're late," she said casually. Then, as if it were a punchline we'd practiced together, she added, "You don't mind paying the bill, do you?" My sister laughed, no surprise, no discomfort. And in that moment it hit me. I wasn't there to celebrate anything. I was there to put an end to something tonight, once and for all. My name is Diana. I'm 30 years old. And for most of my life, my family has summed me up with a single word: easy. Easy to manage. Easy to depend on. Easy to ask for favors. It was never meant as praise. From the outside, my family looks steady. Parents who are still married and love hosting dinners. A younger sister who's always smiling in photos. Holiday cards that show up on time every single year. If you sat across from us at a table, you'd think we were close, welcoming, normal. But closeness isn't about how often you share a table. It's about who's allowed to take up space. Growing up, my sister Tiffany occupied all of it. Her opinions mattered. Her mood set the atmosphere. If she wanted something, everyone adjusted. I learned early that staying quiet made life easier. Being low maintenance earned approval. When I didn't ask for anything, my mother would squeeze my arm and say, "See, Diana understands." Understanding became my assignment. By my mid-20s, that role started coming with a price. Not written bills, just unspoken expectations. At first, I paid for small things: groceries, utility bills, a short trip that somehow went over budget. Each time it was presented as temporary. And each time it quietly became permanent. I never formally explained my career to my family. I didn't exactly lie. I just didn't correct them when they assumed I worked somewhere modest, something stable, something that explained why I dressed simply and never talked about money. Letting them underestimate me kept things peaceful. It also kept the favors coming. My parents loved celebrating milestones, anniversaries, birthdays, promotions that weren't really promotions. They favored places that felt important, restaurants where the staff knew their names, where prices weren't printed on the menu. And somehow, I was always contacted last, after reservations were set, after choices were locked in. I told myself it was coincidence. Just timing. The same comforting lie I repeated until it felt real. On the night of their anniversary, I came straight from work, exhausted but willing. I brought a small gift, thoughtful, personal, something that said I made the effort even if I was late. But standing there, looking at cleared plates and relaxed faces, I felt that familiar tightening in my chest, the one that whispered, "You know exactly how this ends." I watched my mother's eyes flick briefly toward the check holder. I watched my father lean back, content. I watched my sister scroll through her phone, completely unconcerned. They weren't waiting for me to celebrate with them. They were waiting for me to fulfill my role. And for the first time, instead of shrinking back into it, I wondered what would happen if I stopped playing along. I pulled out the chair they'd saved for me, the only one without a jacket hanging over the back, and sat down. The table still carried the scent of butter and wine, rich and settled, like the end of something carefully completed. My mother reached for her water glass and released a quiet sigh, the kind people give when a performance ends without a hitch. "You should have come earlier," she said, not with blame, just observation. "The service was incredible." My father was already nodding, loosening his collar. "You missed the best part." Tiffany didn't lift her eyes from her phone. "We saved you dessert," she said, then gave a small laugh. "Well, kind of." A server stepped up with a leather-bound check folder and placed it neatly in the middle of the table. No one reached for it. No one had to. It simply rested there, waiting for me. My mom tilted her head again. "You don't mind covering this, right? We figured since you've been working so much lately." She let the words fade, as if generosity was implied, as if this was an unspoken agreement among adults. Tiffany finally glanced up, her eyes moving from the check to my face. "Relax," she said. "You're always good at handling things like this." Then she smiled, amused, unaware. Exactly the same as ever. That phrase hit harder than I expected. I looked around the table. My dad wouldn't meet my gaze. My mom's smile stayed fixed. Tiffany was already back on her screen, and something shifted. Not anger, at least not yet. Just clarity. I ran through the last year in my mind. The last-minute dinner invitations. The texts that came only after reservations were set. How I was never asked what worked for me, only told. I remembered how tonight's invite had included no time, just a location. We're already here, my mom had said. Come when you can. When you can. I looked again at the plates, wiped clean. No crumbs. No pause. They hadn't been waiting for me to eat. They'd been waiting for me to arrive. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about celebrating or family or even money. It was about certainty. They were certain I'd show up, certain I'd pay, certain I wouldn't make things awkward. That certainty had been built over years, layer by layer. Every time I stayed silent to keep everything smooth. The check folder felt heavier just sitting there. I reached for my glass, took a slow sip of water and said nothing. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. Because in that moment, I finally understood something I'd been avoiding for a long time. This wasn't confusion. It was a system. And systems don't collapse from conversations. They collapse when someone stops sustaining them. I paid the bill that night, not out of obligation and not out of fear. I paid because I needed one last clean data point, one final confirmation that I wasn't imagining the pattern. Driving home, the city lights streaked past my windshield. My phone buzzed once. A text from my mom. Thank you for taking care of that. We knew we could count on you. No heart emoji. No warmth. Just relief, like a task had been checked off. At home, the silence felt different. Not heavy but deliberate. I set my keys down, slipped off my shoes and opened my laptop. The screen lit up the dark room, steady and truthful. I didn't open my work files. I opened the folder I avoided. The one I'd been quietly adding to for years without ever naming it. Payments. Bills. Transfers. Support. Each entry alone looked small, reasonable, justifiable. Together they told another story. I scrolled slowly. Dinner after dinner. Travel costs. Emergency loans that were never repaid. Utilities I'd been covering without being asked anymore. This wasn't generosity. It was all tied to infrastructure. I leaned back in my chair, letting the figures sink in. The total itself didn't stun me, the timeline did. How far back it began, how quietly it expanded, how effortlessly everyone reshaped their lives around it. Caleb walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. He didn't ask what I was working on. He never did. He simply placed one next to me and waited. They didn't even bother pretending tonight, I said. He nodded. They didn't need to. I told him what Tiffany had said, the laugh, the word clueless. Caleb's jaw tightened, but his tone stayed even. That's what people say when they believe you'll never stop. I looked back at the screen, at lines that once felt generous and now read like duty. This ends, I said, not with anger but with certainty. Caleb didn't argue. He didn't celebrate. He asked only one thing. Do you want to talk to someone before you do? I already knew who. My lawyer, the one who managed my financial limits, not my feelings. I finally closed the laptop. Not because it was finished, but because the plan was taking shape. I wasn't going to confront anyone. I wasn't going to make an announcement. I wasn't going to turn it into a scene. I was simply going to stop showing up. And the second I did, I knew the fallout wouldn't be dramatic. It would be instant. I didn't say anything to my family. I didn't send a long explanation. I didn't drop hints. I let routine do what it always did. Carry them forward under the belief that I'd arrive and fix everything afterward. 2 weeks later, my mom texted me about dinner. Same restaurant. Same tone. Anniversary makeup. We should all be together. No question mark. No time. Just a location. I said yes. When I arrived that evening, nothing was different. The lighting was warm. The hostess smiled like she remembered us. My parents were already seated. Tiffany was in the middle of a story, hands flying dramatically, while her boyfriend nodded as if every word was captivating. They didn't pause when I sat down. My mom briefly touched my arm. There you are, she said. We went ahead and ordered. You know how long menus take. I smiled, not tight, not forced. Calm. Dinner unfolded exactly as it always had. Plates came and went. Bottles appeared without anyone checking prices. My dad laughed louder after his second drink. Tiffany scrolled between bites, tilting her phone just right for photos. No one asked what I wanted. I noticed everything. The satisfied way my mom leaned back. The way my dad never even looked at the menu. The way Tiffany ordered something for the table and pulled it closer to herself. It was choreography perfectly practiced. Halfway through the meal, my mom said casually, "Oh, did you ever hear back about that other thing?" I knew what she meant. Another cost. Another expectation. "Not yet," I said. She nodded, unconcerned. "Well, we'll talk later." Later. That word used to knot my stomach. Tonight it didn't. When the dessert plates arrived, I caught the server's eye and gave a small nod. She hesitated, then placed the check folder at the edge of the table. Same spot. Same quiet. No one moved. My mom looked at it, then at me. "Whenever you're ready," she said softly. I didn't reach for it. Instead, I stood up. "I'm going to speak to the manager for a moment," I said. The table went still. Tiffany blinked. "Why?" "I have a question," I said, my voice steady. The manager came over quickly, polite, professional. I lowered my voice just enough that the table couldn't catch every word, but enough that they knew something was happening. "Hi," I said. "I just wanted to double-check something regarding the account setup connected to this table." The manager gave a small nod and looked down at his tablet. His face changed just a bit, not worried, just focused. "Yes," he replied. "It appears the previous authorizations are no longer valid." My mother straightened in her seat. "What does that mean?" The manager looked from one of us to the other. "It means we'll need a payment method from the guests dining here tonight." The silence that followed felt heavy. My father cleared his throat. "There's usually no problem." "I understand," the manager said gently, "but there isn't an account on file this evening." My mother turned to me. Really turned to me. Her smile disappeared. "Diana." I held her eyes. "I won't be paying for dinner tonight." Tiffany let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Okay, that's funny." "I'm not joking," I said. My father's brow furrowed. "What's happening?" I sat back down and rested my hands together in my lap. "What's happening is I've been covering more than just meals for a long time. And I'm finished." My mother lowered her voice. "You're doing this here?" "I'm not doing anything," I replied. "I'm just not doing what you assumed I would." Tiffany snorted. "So you're trying to humiliate us?" I looked straight at her. "You didn't feel embarrassed when you laughed at me last time." She opened her mouth, then shut it. My dad leaned closer. "We're family. You don't just stop helping without a conversation." "I've been talking," I said. "You just weren't listening." The manager shifted awkwardly. I turned toward him. "We'll need separate checks." My mother sucked in a breath. "Separate?" "Yes," I said. "Mine and yours." The manager nodded and walked away. My mother's face turned red. "You can't do this." "I can," I said. "And I am." Tiffany shoved her chair back. "This is unbelievable. After everything we've done for you." I almost laughed. Not from spite, but from sudden clarity. "What you've done," I said slowly, "is teach me that your love comes with a bill. And I don't accept that anymore." My father shook his head. "You think you're teaching us a lesson?" "No," I said. "I'm teaching myself one." The checks returned, one thin folder, one thick stack. My mother stared at them as if they were written in a foreign language. "I don't have my card," she said reflexively. "I know," I replied. Tiffany whispered something to her boyfriend. He stood up stiffly. I need to take this call," he muttered, already walking off. My mother's hand shook as she dug through her purse. My father reached for his wallet, then paused. For the first time they looked uncertain, not angry, not offended, just caught unprepared. The manager stood by, waiting calmly. My mother lifted her gaze to meet mine, her eyes suddenly keen. "You're enjoying this." "I'm not," I replied truthfully. "I'm done." She studied my expression, searching for remorse, for tenderness, for the daughter who would step in and make things right. She didn't find her. They settled the bill slowly and awkwardly, asking questions they didn't care for the answers to. I covered my portion and rose from the table. As I walked off, my mom said my name, not harshly, not kindly, just unsure. I kept moving. Outside, the air felt cooler, lighter. I knew this wasn't over. I knew calls would come, messages would pile up, accusations would be thrown around. But something fundamental had cracked. And once that happens, things never quite function the same again. The aftermath didn't hit all at once. It came in waves, brief texts, unanswered calls, messages that began polite and ended pointed. I replied to none of them, not out of bitterness but out of certainty. Without my quiet support holding everything together, the balance shifted quickly. Dinners grew smaller. Plans were abruptly delayed. The confidence my parents once carried so effortlessly began to show hairline fractures. Not dramatic, just noticeable. Tiffany stopped sharing photos from places that required reservations. Her boyfriend vanished from family discussions altogether. No one said sorry. I wasn't waiting for it. What caught me off guard was how little guilt I felt. For years I'd imagined this moment, assuming it would hurt more, that I'd grieve something. Instead, I felt grounded, like I'd finally put down a burden I hadn't realized was weighing me down. At home, life grew quieter in the best way. Caleb and I had unhurried dinners. We talked about work, about plans that didn't revolve around anyone else's expectations. For the first time, my time felt like it truly belonged to me. I didn't cut my family off. I simply stopped padding their lives. I stopped smoothing things over and absorbing consequences that weren't mine. When they reached out, I answered honestly. When they asked for help, I said no without justification. And something unexpected happened. The world didn't fall apart. I didn't turn heartless. I became clear. The restaurant incident faded with time. The lesson didn't. Boundaries aren't barriers. They're doors you decide when to open. And when you close one that's been draining you for years, the quiet on the other side isn't isolation. It's peace. If you've ever been the one who always shows up, always pays, always fixes what others refuse to confront, hear this. You're not selfish for stopping. You're not cruel for choosing yourself. You're allowed to set boundaries even with family. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.